their boundaries, and people are being displaced by high rental rates, grocery stores that they cannot afford, all of these amenities that do not accommodate the people that have been there. And so it's just about really being conscious where you intervene and what you're doing in your process. A lot of people like to reference Detroit Future City as like a great, and it's a great starting point. You had a lot of community meetings and a lot of conversations that came out of really putting that book together. But people tire of sitting in meetings and talking about the things that they want, and then someone finally takes interest in a community and it's still not what they wanted. It's what that person wanted because they saw that opportunity to do what they wanted there without being considerate and conscious of the people that have been there and what they want. And particularly people that have long invested in these communities. You have a lot of local businesses that have gone overlooked as you have more businesses that continue to move into the city. And so again, it's really just about inclusion and how you go about that process. I hope I answered your question.
And that's what my question was about. Have you seen really innovative partnerships arising between the people who could potentially be displaced and the people who are actually leading the pop-up movement?
There are a lot of efforts. Whether that follows through is another situation, but you do see that in a lot of communities that are outside of the downtown and greater downtown area. So like the Jeff Chalmers area where I am heavily involved, you have the Rosedale Grandmont community, you have Palmer Park, Sherwood Forest, the Osborne community. You have a lot of other places that have realized that, hey, we're here too, and we're entitled to a wonderful community and wonderful assets too, and they're really working with other people and bringing other people in, and people that want to be there are working with the people that are there to make that happen in those other neighborhoods outside of downtown and midtown. Yes, sir?
What's motivating the code enforcement against pop-ups?
Honestly, I don't know. Being very active in Detroit, you hear a lot of he say, she say, especially when you're heavily involved. And so there's a lot of driving forces for those things. But particularly, honestly, I don't know. Especially because so much good comes out of it. People go on to open up their own storefronts, in other communities and other neighborhoods. It activates something that's sat vacant. So a lot of people really don't understand the beef with pop-ups, but people still go on. It's been more of an issue with food pop-ups for code and safety reasons, so making sure that people are preparing in commercial kitchens, but then you also had a series of restaurants that were illegally hosting pop-ups. And so, illegally, however they see it. But that was more of the bigger issue than just pop-ups in general. But you also have a lot of entrepreneurs that are co-collaborating, like local retailers that display other t-shirt companies or other goods in their storefront. So it's really about helping each other out. And I've really seen a lot of that as of late. Yes, ma'am.
What are the difficulties of working with the city in permitting? Is there any additional difficulties because it is in the state of bankruptcy?
Not even just the state of bankruptcy, just the transition in general from one mayor's office to another, changing out of the staff and people just really not knowing the process. You have a lot of people in place that are just unaware. And so you can get the runaround for days just trying to do something so simple that takes 20 minutes when you finally get to the right person that you probably started off at. And so it's really just a matter of having the right people in place that know what's going on. And because there's no direction coming from the mayor's office, and because there's so much that's lost in translation, especially as they're wrapping up the emergency manager tenure, people just really don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things that are just, people are just unsure of. Yes, ma'am.
This is really incredible, by the way. I have to say, like, this is a lot of work.
Thank you.
But I was curious, you know, you said you're not sure about what's next, but I, you know, maybe, I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of, like, what are the next things that, you know, you probably have some stuff in the back of your head in terms of, like, here are the next things that we really need to start tackling?
My biggest thing is inclusion again, because I am a Detroiter, and the reality is that, and I know a lot of people hate to bring it up, but race plays a huge factor, especially in a city like Detroit, where you have a lot of people that have not been the majority for a while that are coming in, and now it seems that the minority has been displaced in their own communities. And so you have a lot of backlash. So, you know, there are people, there are organizations, there are nonprofits that are starting to have these conversations and these dialogues about inclusion and being sensitive to others' cultures as we go in and we design things and build things and open businesses. And I think that that's probably the best start. As far as development goes, the river is south. Let's see. Almost there. The river is south. And so from downtown, it is in my personal opinion that the development will continue to go east and then it will go north from the riverfront. So you have a lot of projects that are in the works that are a lot of mixed-use development, a lot of residential and retail projects that are expanding along the riverfront, and then you have a lot of communities that are just north of that those riverfront neighborhoods that are starting to repopulate, and you have people that are investing there. So West Village is now a walkable neighborhood, and you have restaurants and you have bars there, but it's like people have been there, but now it's the new hip place. So again, just making sure that people are included and not overlooked as we continue to grow and progress as a city. Yes, sir.
Do you have a sense of what's bringing money into downtown Detroit today?
I honestly, it's a real estate war right now. It's Dan Gilbert versus a couple of other huge investors that are buying up their properties and just kind of waiting in time to develop them. So I wouldn't necessarily say downtown. Maybe we'll talk about midtown, because downtown is kind of tied into those few investors and then the Gilbert empire. So Midtown Detroit Inc. is a local development company, and they profit from the development fees. And so you have this neighborhood that has been working for 25 plus years to develop the Cass Corridor community in the Midtown neighborhood. And it's also a college town, so Wayne State University, one of the largest public universities in the state, is located in Midtown also. And so that has kind of really driven the development of that neighborhood and the expansion. In addition to, now you have the new hockey arena that will be moving from the riverfront into Midtown. Really just with populating this neighborhood and filling it with storefronts and businesses, people feel that it's safe and it's walkable, so you have people that are now moving there, and it's a place to live, and it's the place to be, and it's the place to live. And so I really think that they're kind of like feeding each other, really. I would really attribute that to the university and kind of bridging that gap between Midtown and downtown. So development moving south and then north. Yes, sir.
What's your sense of kind of the, I don't know, or what is your opinion maybe on like outside investment coming into Detroit? Because I feel like I've heard a lot of different opinions as far as folks who believe, you know, in any place that it's locals that should be doing the redevelopment as opposed to, like I talked to Dan Patera from DC, and he seemed to get a different sentiment that other folks he was talking to were happy to see folks that were excited about Detroit and experimenting there and seeing it as a, you know, place of growth now. I don't know, just your personal take.
Excuse me. So, I really believe that there's room for everyone in Detroit. There's so much opportunity, bless you.
Thank you.
There's so much opportunity in the vacant properties. They're structurally sound, but they're vacant, you know. There's a lot of land to be developed, but it goes unmowed. So there's room for everyone to do some of anything in Detroit. And so I personally do not see the issue, or do not have an issue with outside investors or outsiders coming in and making Detroit their home. Again, it's really about how you go about doing those things. And at the end of the day, to me, it all goes back to inclusiveness and inclusion and being conscious and aware outside of yourself that there are people that are directly affected by all of your actions.
One last
Yes.
question, Richard?
So I'm familiar with living in a place that's pretty cold, Moscow, Idaho. It gets pretty cold in winter, and I have a feeling a similar issue happens here. It gets pretty cold and snowy, right?
Indeed.
So my comment and perhaps question is, it gets pretty cold, so there's a long period of time where construction has a hard time happening. And construction is something like, somebody can correct me, but I think it's like 50% of the capital influx or inflow with, you know, people build stuff, and that's where a lot of the money comes from for cities. So when you have this long period of time where construction can't really happen because it's too cold, I'm curious, perhaps maybe you would be better informed, but if that might be one of the issues why Detroit is having a hard time, because there's just this time where a lot of money can't come in.
I would not say that. I don't think that construction really drives that, because, perfect example, Dan Gilbert owns Greektown Casino in downtown. The exit ramp to Greektown Casino was one lane. So on Monday, one week, he says, hey, we need a second lane for this exit, particularly because most of the traffic is going to my casino. Thursday, construction starts. That was a month ago, and it's almost complete. So I don't think that it's construction driven. It's really about, in my opinion, it's about the resources. So if it's not downtown, if it's not midtown, if it's not the greater downtown area, or heavily developed communities like Palmer Park, where you have mansions and things like that, most of the other communities are really depending on grant dollars, donations, all of those things that take time to resource. And so I think that for things to get done outside of that area, it's really just depending on those things. And the reality is you have so many organizations, you have so many CDCs and nonprofits and business associations that are all competing for the same local grants. And that's what makes it difficult. And so you do have some larger companies like GM or Ford, they have their foundation dollars here and there, but again, the same organizations are competing for the same thing. For example, we have over 130 local municipalities in the greater Detroit area. Can you imagine how difficult it is to get things done regionally? So if you can imagine that, and then bring that into Detroit, where you have these neighborhoods that are completely scattered throughout the city that are all trying to do the same thing. They've all been hit hard by the move out of all of the industry. You have these factories that have come in, like the Chrysler plant just north of the Jeff Chalmers community. It was once full of homes and residences. And so it's over 60 city blocks that they took out and they made a factory in kind of like right before mid-20th century. And so then when Chrysler up and moved, everyone else moved. And people like to say it was the race riots that caused white flight and caused people to leave the city. It was really the relocation of the industry. And when they moved to Sterling Heights, which is 30, 45 minutes outside the city, when they moved to Dearborn, when they moved downriver, it took the people with them and it left homes that were built for 2 million people. And so, you have these CDCs that are trying to set boundaries within their communities because they're getting limited dollars. And it's like, okay, we can only do so much here, here, and here, so let's focus here. And I really think that kind of plays a bigger part in how soon things get done in the city.
Great. Naomi,
He had one.
is there one?
I'm sorry.
I do one.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
No, go
Is,
ahead.
is there an explicit dialogue about race relations going on in Detroit now?
I don't think there's enough, but there have been. You have a lot of, you have a lot of nonprofits, you have a lot of people that have been educated in the city or otherwise that have come back and returned home that are like, hey, this is my home. Let's have these conversations. I'm seeing what's happening to my family and my friends and the people that I grew up with. But also I have these intellectual friends over here that I'm networking with, that I'm working with, that I'm volunteering with. How can I bring them in one room? How can we have this conversation? How can we have this dialogue? So it started, but it's a slow process.
Thank you, Naomi. Great presentation.